DRS Yadav from the QUT Design Lab, Brisbane, Australia, here to present my paper to empathize or perceive towards an approach for perceptive design. Imagine a team of designers trying to reduce homelessness in a city. How do these designers, who have no lived experience of homelessness, attempt to understand those experiencing homelessness? Should the designers empathize with them, or should they perceive them? As designers, we are taught to empathize with our users, put ourselves in their shoes, become our users, to truly understand them. The empathic process of understanding others seems to imply that in order to become them, we need to lose ourselves. What if we don't have to lose ourselves in the process of understanding others? What if we retain and acknowledge our own experiences and our consciousness for understanding others? This study proposes perception as an alternative to empathy for user understanding in design. Perception can allow us to retain and objectively draw from our own consciousness and experiences to gain insights that better inform the design process. The dictionary defines perception as both the awareness of something through the senses and the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. Perception is more than mere information from our senses. Perception is our inference and even our interpretation of the information from our senses. This study builds on the dictionary definition to propose that one's perception of another is shaped by the perspectives, experiences, and consciousness of the perceiver. To support the application of perceptive design in practice, I developed the perceptive design methodology. The perceptive design methodology is centered on a conceptual scale and taxonomy. The perceptive design methodology stems from the premise that there are degrees to understanding others and that there are multiple ways of understanding others. While empathy is largely limited to understanding someone's emotional or affective states, perception is more holistic. It considers the affective, the cognitive, the environmental, and the contextual factors for the holistic understanding of users. Being aware that there are degrees to understanding others and that there are multiple ways of understanding others allows designers to engage in the type or level of perception relevant to the design context. This awareness allows designers to better inform and leverage the design process. The perceptive design scale, as part of the perceptive design methodology, acts as a guide to aid designers in the process of understanding users' lives and experiences. The perceptive design scale provides an awareness of the range of conceptual depths the designers can go to achieve an understanding of the user. It allows for a progression of levels of user understanding from recognize being the lowest level on to resonate and relate the middle levels on to realize the highest level of perception on the perceptive design scale. The first stage of perception is recognize, where the designer gains an understanding about the user by becoming aware of the user's context and requirements through surveys and user data, not necessarily interacting with the user at this stage. The second stage of perception is resonate, where the designer gains insight into the user's mental and emotional states, potentially interacting with the users through interviews and stories. The third level of perception is relate, where the designer either consciously and actively places themselves mentally into the user's context or gains insights into the user's behavioral responses to a stimulus. The highest level of perception is realize, where the designer shares experiences with the user as part of the process of understanding the user through augmented reality exercises or immersion exercises. The development of the perceptive design scale was done through studying social cognition and applying it, Social cognition is a branch of cognitive science that involves perceiving and inferring others to understand, explain, and predict their actions and behaviors. Social cognition predominantly comprises of three approaches: theory, simulation theory, and interaction theory. Theory is where we infer others' mental states, such as beliefs, desires, fears, through commonsensical principles and generalizations, such as hearing the fire alarm and inferring that Joe left the building as they heard the fire alarm as well. Simulation theory is when we use our own minds as models to mirror or understand other minds, such as inferring Joe will like a movie that we liked because we have similar tastes in movies. Interaction theory is when we perceive through social interactions comprising direct perception and narratives, such as inferring Joe's anger or joy from their tone of voice or expression. This study draws on all three approaches of theory, simulation theory, and interaction theory in the development of the perceptive design scale. The application of the perceptive design scale is demonstrated for two contexts: design for social change context and the user-centered design context. For the context of designing for social change, we consider the issue of homelessness. In the recognized level, cognitive understanding of the homeless person's context is established from sources such as surveys, demographic data, reports, and journeys through the existing service of the homelessness service system. The second stage of resonate is where data from the previous stage is supplemented with interview information about the user's journey through the existing homelessness service system. In this stage, we gain insights into their mental states as they journey through the homelessness service system. The third level of perception is relate, where the designer consciously adopts the mental perspective of the experience of homelessness in relation to their own lives. In this stage, the designer potentially draws on their own experiences of instability and uncertainty in their lives. The fourth level of perception of realize is where the designer, through a process of immersion, attempts to understand the user's experience through simulation. For the context of user-centered design, consider a transit app being designed by diverse stakeholders. In the recognized level, cognitive understanding of the potential user's transit needs and patterns is established from sources such as transit surveys and demographic data. In the resonate level, by interacting with potential users, data from the previous stage is supplemented with interview information about the user's circumstances in relation to their transit requirements. The third level of relate is where the user tries a prototype of the app for the designer to scope behavioral insights from users trying the app. The fourth level of realize is where the designer simulates the user experience with the app to further the design of the app. The application of the perceptive design scale is also demonstrated as an analytical tool. This is done by evaluating 10 common user-centered design tools on the perceptive design scale. To illustrate how they measure on the perceptive design scale, we examine 3 user-centered design tools: surveys, interviews, and people shadowing. Surveys provide preliminary design context through insights from user needs, wants, demographics, etc. They are placed on the recognized level as they provide key context for the designer to recognize aspects of the user. Interviews provide insight into a person's opinions, desires, and fears. They are placed on the resonate and the relate levels because the designer can resonate with and relate to contextual, mental, or emotional insights gained from the interviews. People shadowing provides insights into users' environment, providing contextual details into a person's motivation and behavioral responses. People shadowing is placed at the realized level because it provides experiential insights at the simulation level allowing for the designer to almost realize the user's life. The perceptive design scale can also be used as an analytical tool to assess design processes to guide the designer. The levels can be standalone levels to evaluate where a design process is on the perception scale and gauge if that is the appropriate level for it. It can also indicate how deep the designer is going or the type of understanding required, whether the understanding required is to be contextual or mental or experiential in order to understand the user. It also provides opportunities for the designer to reassess and modulate that level on the conceptual scale. In summary, the perceptive design methodology creates awareness that the design process involves a range of types and/or levels for understanding the user. It also acts as a roadmap for the designer to navigate the fluid concept of understanding the user by providing structure. It aligns understanding about the user as user insights gained can lead to shared representations of the user. Contributions. The theoretical contribution is the proposed concept of perceptive design. The methodological contribution is the applicability of the perceptive design scale as a design process. The empirical contribution is the applicability of the perceptive design scale as an analytical tool. Thank you.